The Last Door Season 1 is a pixel art point-and-click horror game about Jeremiah DeWitt, who receives a letter from his childhood friend and soon embarks down a rabbit hole of madness. Atmosphere. The feeling of The Last Door changes chapter by chapter, with the first one being very creepy and full of dread as you explore the abandoned house of your close friend, chapter 2 being more sad with a feeling of unsettling paranoia as you journey to your old school turned hospice, where it feels like the nuns are up to something. Chapter 3 seems more supernatural with the repeating environments and dense fog, and finally chapter 4 finishes the season out with the almost cosmic horror style and all its foreboding mystery. The overall feeling to the game is one of mystery. It's never clear what's really going on, with the story revealing itself very slowly, but never really telling you everything. The graphics resemble early Sierra adventure titles like King's Quest and Leisure Suit Larry, with a style that makes things just about represent what they're meant to be, and people's faces are left almost entirely blank, which I find a little creepy. The environment sometimes requires some imagination, but it's padded out by the excellent sound design. It doesn't feel like the game really needed this style of graphics, and it does obscure things for better or for worse, but it doesn't hinder the gameplay or the atmosphere. The music that accompanies the chapters is often sad and desperate sounding gentle piano that sometimes contrasts with the creepy and disturbing content in the game, but it does go a long way to building the atmosphere. The game's atmosphere holds the experience together, and with point-and-click games, solving puzzles can sometimes be tediously slow, but The Last Door keeps the atmosphere going the entire time. That's one Harry Mason. Scares. The game contains one or two jump scares that stand out amongst the slow gameplay. They almost always caught me off guard and never felt cheap, but that's really it for the straight up scares. There's a lot of unsettling moments, like building a doll that resembles a dead woman so a violin player can finish his music, or morbid things like hitting a crow with a hammer to put it out of its misery. But it feels like a few of the truly spooky moments are underutilized. The overwhelmingly eerie singing that can be heard in the sewer in Chapter 3 that gets louder the further you get to the back of the chamber raised a lot of tension as I walked into the darkness expecting to find something, or worse, have something find me. But it just doesn't go anywhere and killed off the fear completely. I bring up this specific case as it's probably the most frightening, dread-filled moment in the game, and it has no payoff, which is just exceedingly disappointing. Whilst the atmosphere manages to keep things going through the story, the jump scares are all that's really making the game frightening, and they're a bit too brief in a game that can be very long based on people's puzzle-solving ability. That's still one Harry Mason. Sound design. The music tracks mostly consist of somber piano and violin pieces. Some of them give off a vague Resident Evil 2 vibe to me for some reason, but it gives the game a sad feeling of forgetfulness and despair. On its venture into darker territories, it mostly goes for low grinding strings and organs that give a bit of an otherworldly feel, which is more in line with the subject matter of suicide and madness that the game presents. There's no voice acting, with the old school text prompts being the only dialogue available, but the crisp sound effects bring in a lot of realism to the world, from the crystal clear music box to the strained sound of the dying crow and the occasional scream. It's really well done and helps both immersion and atmosphere. The directional audio isn't needed for a 2D game, but it was implemented anyway, which again boosts the immersion. The sound design really went above and beyond in this game to keep things going. That's 2 Harry Masons. gore. The chunky pixels allow you to tell what's happening, but they're not refined enough for you to see a lot of the gore properly, with most of it just being red squares. There's a lot of gory moments that are being held back by the style of the game, and it's such a shame that since a lot of it is portrayed in the story. That's still 2 Harry Masons. Story. Jeremiah DeWitt receives a letter from his childhood friend, and the game opens with his friend saying a few lines about forbidden knowledge before committing suicide. What follows is a mysterious tale of DeWitt's recollection of events from his childhood through the 4 chapters by visiting various locations and meeting and seeing strange people and things. As mentioned earlier, the events of the past is fed to the player in small bits here and there, and it's truly interesting as it becomes more and more apparent that something incredibly strange and horrifying took place back then, and no one really wants to talk about it. There's a very mild sense of cosmic horror as the unseen forces interfere with DeWitt's life, and recurring crow seems to follow him everywhere. The story is thoroughly enjoyable and really pushes the player forward to find out more, with its trail of breadcrumbs back to the past everyone wishes they didn't remember, making the final score 3 out of 5 Harry Masons. Point-and-click horror games are few and far between, but The Last Door Season 1 is a really great start in a series I'm really looking forward to continuing. Again, I'd like to remind you this whole thing is down to my opinion on horror games. If you don't share this opinion, then that's cool. I get it. I'd like to point out that whilst I felt bad for that crow, I did not scream like a banshee or run away from the computer, and I advise you don't either. There will be more horror reviews in the pipeline, and thanks for watching. Also go check out Bumps in the Middle of the Night. Peace.